Hey guys, what's up? Hope you are doing well. Welcome back to the Potter Podcast. I'm excited to have you guys on. For those of you watching live, what is up? Hope you are doing well, and thanks for tuning in. And I want to talk about a topic today that I think a lot of people are thinking about and wanting to know, and we're experiencing it with our buyers as we're out there. And me and my team have had this discussion. And so I want to have this discussion with you guys. And so the question is, what will a seller accept as a fair price? And we've been getting asked that question a lot. And if you know anything about this market, we are in a seller's market. And therefore, that means that the seller has all the leverage. And when I say a seller's market too, what price range does that consist of, right? Because sometimes you can be in different price ranges, and does that mean that it's a seller's market in every price range? At least for us and what we're seeing, we can say that yes, we are seeing it as a seller's market in every single price range. And what I mean by that is that's anywhere from 175 all the way up over past $1 million. And so we are seeing multiple offers in situations in all those price ranges. We are seeing all the leverage being in the seller's hands and decisions and negotiating and those types of things because they can, because they have multiple offers and they have low inventory. There's low inventory on this market. And so that's what gives them the leverage. So when the seller wants to close, the seller's going to close. When the seller wants to waive an inspection or wants to waive other contingencies, they're going to do that. When they want to accept an offer that's 15, 20, 30, 40, sometimes 50,000 plus over the asking price and waive the appraisal contingency, they can do that because that is basically the market that we are in. And so the question becomes, what is a fair price to offer these sellers, and how do we get away from that, right? Like if you're a buyer, you're like, when is this ever going to stop? And I want to talk about just how that's going to come into fruition and if that comes into fruition, right? And so let's start with the question first. What is a fair price to offer a seller in this market? And we've kind of figured this out on a couple different ranges, and I'm not going to share all of our secrets, but we've kind of got an equation that we kind of go by and figure out depending on how many offers are on the property and all those things to arrive at the price that we think you should definitely offer on the property as we're looking at it. And so what I mean by that is if you are a buyer out there and you're thinking that you're going to go get a deal on something, that is not going to happen, at least right now in this market. And it hasn't honestly been happening in a long time here. And when I say a long time, I'm going to say even the past couple years here in Omaha, but now even more so. I'm going to say that it's not happening anytime soon, nor is it going to happen in the future because there's a lot of things that need to take place before that happens. So if you are a buyer out there and you're thinking that you're going to get a deal or even thinking that you're going to get to write up at asking or just go a little bit over, that's not the current situation. And so the right expectation needs to be set by your realtor. Hopefully that's us. But the right expectation needs to be set for you to understand that when you're going to purchase a house, you need to be put in the best position to go and get that house and to be aggressive while getting that house. Okay, so a fair price, if I'm being completely honest with you and transparent, a fair price to a seller, the quick answer is it depends, right? Like it depends because it depends on how long has the house been on the market, right? How long has that property been on the market, and how desperate is that seller in this current situation that they're in to sell their house? So obviously, if the house has been on the market for more than a couple weeks, couple months, then you know that you may not have to come in at asking price because maybe they're priced too high, or maybe there's a lot of things going on inside of the house or outside of the house that need work. And there's been enough people to see that and say, yeah, we're not going to pay that price for that. If you are a seller listening, I need you to understand one thing. Your house is only worth what a buyer is willing to pay for it. I know you guys have probably heard me say that on a podcast before, but your house is only worth what a buyer is willing to pay for it. So you've got to take the emotions out of it. You've got to take what you think your house is worth. You got to get rid of what Zestimate says your house is worth. All these things, right, don't matter. What matters is, what is a buyer willing to pay for your house? You're going to know if you're priced right, especially in this market, in all these different price ranges, in the first couple of weeks. If your house hasn't sold in the first couple of weeks, there's something going on either with your house or with the price. Those two things. That's it. Like, you've got enough buyers out there that are looking to purchase a house that if they have not written an offer on your home during that time frame, you've got some issues. And maybe that's just a quick price drop that you need to do because you think your house was worth more than it was. Maybe it's some things that you need to do to make your house a little bit more livable, right? There's a lot of houses on this market, even with the low inventory, that I walk into and I'm like, how did anyone live here? Like, there's just a ton of stuff that needs to be done. Carpet needs to be replaced. Floors need to be replaced. Walls have holes in them. All these things where you're thinking to yourself, like, you want to throw this up on the market comparable to what your neighbors and everybody else is sold for, but you have at least $20,000 to $30,000 of updates or things to do to this house in order to even come close to what those properties have sold for. Like, there's a difference there, right? Like, just because your neighbor's house sold for a certain amount of money doesn't mean your house is going to sell for that, right? They might have different things that entice a buyer to write up more on that property. So let's get back to that question, fair price. And as you're thinking about this as being a buyer, you need to know a couple things as it pertains to this current market. And so what I mean is, if you are, let's say, pre-approved for $200,000, right? Like, I would highly recommend and highly advise you to start looking at homes that are in the 160 to 170 range. Why do I say that? Because there is a trend going on that we've been tracking and watching, that in that certain price range, there's a good chance if that house is move-in ready, that's going to go for $20,000, $25,000, sometimes $30,000 over the asking price if it's a nice house. Okay, so if you're pre-approved for 200, right, and you're going to look at a house that's 195, your max is to go up to 200, right? And in our cases that we're seeing, that house is going well over 200. Okay, that house is going for 225, 230, 235, sometimes even 240. Okay, so you need to understand, as a buyer, in order to put yourself in a position to even give yourself a chance, you've got to talk with your realtor and figure out what is the price range that we should be shopping in right now. Because again, if you've listened to my previous podcast, you only deserve what you can afford. Okay, so like, if you can only afford to live in a $200,000 house because that's what you're pre-approved for, do yourself a favor and do the realtor a favor and not waste anyone else's time, and start looking at houses that are at like 165, 170, 175, because that's going to put yourself in a better position to go get this house. All right. Otherwise, all you're going to be doing is running around looking at houses, falling in love with them, and getting into multiple offer situations and losing every single time because someone's willing to pay more for that house and waive other contingencies. Okay. So you need to know that as you're going out there. So it comes down to a couple things. I think a lot of people get thrown off with this as far as, well, what's a fair price to offer, or where can I find a deal? Well, here's the deal. Number one, you're not going to find a deal in this market. Okay, that's just the reality. It's been the reality for a couple years now. There's no such thing as finding this deal, right? If you're out in that market shopping and a house hits the market today and it's in that price range of anywhere from 150 to 400, there's a good chance that that's going to be gone in the next 48 hours. I'm just telling you as it is. Like, you can't wait. You got to go. You got to get in, and you got to be aggressive. But here's the thing that you need to be aggressive with, and you need to know, is that it's not just the price, okay? Like, when somebody's writing up and they're putting these escalation clauses in, if you're not familiar with an escalation clause, here's how it works. Let's say that there's a house for $200,000 that's for sale, and you go to write up on it, and you write up at $200,000, but you're willing to go up to, let's say, $230 because you've been approved for $230. Okay, you put in an escalation clause that states that, hey, we're willing to match any other offer that comes in pay an additional amount of money over that match up to $230 in this case, right? It could be $240, it could be $250, it could be whatever you're pre-approved for. But you need to know that in any case right now, if there's multiple offers, you need to know that there's a good chance that there's escalation clauses involved. And so you need to talk to your realtor, or you need to be informed on how this escalation clause works and if you're okay with that. Because if you're not, your offer is going to be set to the side, because I can guarantee you there's other offers over here that have escalation clauses that are going along with this property in multiple offer situations. Okay, that's step number one. Step number two is there's a lot of contingencies that are being waived on these contracts as they're coming in. Okay, a lot of times that first thing, unfortunately, to go is the home inspection. So people are waiving the home inspection, right? So they're writing up with an escalation clause, no home inspection, and then they're also waiving maybe some other contingencies like the termite inspection. Maybe they're putting in there that's saying, hey, the closing date is to be determined by the seller. You know, they're putting specific things in there to give themselves a better shot. And in a lot of cases now that we're seeing, this is the crazy thing, but we're seeing it all around. We've just talked to an appraiser yesterday who informed me that he's seeing a lot of this on contracts, is that you've got people that are waiving the appraisal contingency, or they're willing to pay an amount towards the appraisal if it comes back below. So let me give you an example with that. So let's say, in our case, the house was $200. You wrote up with an escalation to $230. Let's say you get the house at $230. What people are doing, as well as writing up to that amount, is they're saying, okay, if the appraisal comes back below $230, we're willing to pay $10,000 difference. So if that appraisal comes in, let's say at $220, okay, that buyer is willing to say, hey, we're going to pay that difference, because that's a $10,000 difference from $220 to $230, and we're going to pay that difference now, $10,000, that we need to bring to the table at closing. So that goes on top of your closing costs, on top of your down payment. That's an additional $10,000 that you need to bring to the table, but now you get the house, right? So this is happening a lot in our market. So those are the things, like when I'm coaching people, especially buyers in this market, you better have some money set aside for these certain situations, because if you don't, you're not ever going to buy a house, right? And that's why I go back to that conversation that I had in my previous podcast, is that you can only you only deserve what you can afford. Because if you can't afford to be in a house right now and you don't have $15,000 to $20,000 saved up and put away to be in those positions to write aggressive offers, you might want to take a break from this market, start saving enough of that money and put that aside to get yourself in a better position to go win a house in this market, because it's crazy. You know, I've shared this before. I don't know if you guys have listened to the previous podcast, but we had one on our team. It was a $300,000 house. Okay, 25 offers. One of my agents wrote up on it. He got the house for $353,000, and they waived all contingencies, including the appraisal. Okay, that's $53,000 over the asking price, and every single contingency was waived as they wrote up. So again, it's not just the price, right, that we're talking about here. We're talking about other things that you've got to be willing to let go of in order to get these houses. So if you're someone that is like, no, we have to get an inspection, you're probably not going to get into a house unless that realtor is able to find you a house where he's got his listing and he's able to partner you two together or something like that. But it's very unlikely in this market, and sadly, that's where we are. Because I'm never a person that would recommend not getting an inspection, right? I think inspections are good, but I also will be upfront with you and tell you what I'm seeing from the selling side and from the buy side. And when you're in that many multiple offer situations, and that's the first thing that you're seeing that gets waived on a lot of these contracts, then I'm obviously going to advise or recommend or share with my people that, like, hey, if you really want to get this house, you got to be willing to give that up, right? And unfortunately, like I said, it's not something that I'm happy with doing, because I think it gives you a peace of mind getting into a house. But I will say this, even with the inspections, and in most cases, if I were to go back the last 5 years and I were to look at all the inspections that were done on our properties, there's a lot of minimal stuff that comes up on those things that you can do yourself, that you can fix, like electrical outlets, all those types of things. Are there some major things? Absolutely. There are always, and I shouldn't say always, there are some major things that come up, whether that's roofing issues, or maybe some rotting issues, or some things around the windows, or different things like that. Those are major things to be aware of. But I will say this too, you kind of know that going into the house because you can see those things, right? Now, sometimes you can't see the roof because you don't get up on the roof and you look at it. That's why you have an inspector do it. But if that's something that you want a peace of mind with, always have somebody come out there afterwards and come take a look at it, let you know. If you don't know the age of the roof, have one of those inspectors. We have a trusted network of an inspector that we work with. Shout out John Waniger and Inspectix. They do an awesome job. We use them for all of our inspections, and we use some other inspectors if they're not available. But that is something that you should know as you're working with a realtor with their trusted network as well, is who do they have in their trusted network that I would be able to utilize after I move into my home? Do they have guys that can fix up some drywall? Do they have guys that can patch some holes? Do they have guys that can do some flooring for us, or remodel a kitchen or a bathroom, or whatever the case is, if you're not willing to do that? Those are the type of people that you want to make sure that your realtor has connections with, and obviously trusted connections who are professionals and things like that. But as far as the fair price, I went on kind of a tangent there. There's, again, other things that you need to think about that come along with getting a good deal or a fair price when you're buying these houses, right? And so, again, just to recap, you're going to be in a situation in this current market as a buyer to know that, if I'm going in and this house has just hit the market, okay? This house has just hit the market. It's been on the market for a very short period of time. You're going to know you're going to have to be pretty aggressive. Now, what I will say is you may find some houses, very little, but you may find some that have been on the market for a longer period of time, maybe a couple more weeks, a couple months. Then when you're in those situations, you may not necessarily have to come in at listing price, right? That's where you have the option of maybe coming in a little bit lower and offering and see what the seller's willing to do. And if they're not willing to budge and you're not willing to budge, right? Goes back to my whole point, is a buyer's only willing to pay what they think the house is worth. And so if that buyer is like, well, we don't want to pay that, then they're free to walk away. They don't have to go with the counter offer or anything like that. And that's the same thing with the seller. If you're a seller in this market and you get an offer you don't like, you don't have to take it. You don't have to take any offer, right? You could have 25 offers on your house, and if you don't like any of them, you don't have to take anyone. I obviously wouldn't advise you not to take all of those. I would say let's pick one of those and try to counter or go with something because the market's telling us something, right? But you need to listen to the market. Again, if you're a seller in this market, the market is going to tell you very quickly if you're priced right. The market is going to tell you very quickly if your house is a move-in ready house that doesn't need to have any work done to it, right? If you are sitting on that and you had 100 showings and no offers, the market's speaking to you and telling you, flashing red light, saying, hey, something's wrong here, whether that's the price, the condition, your location, maybe it's your neighborhood, but something there is speaking volumes to what it is that is wrong with your house, because there is something wrong if you have 100 people come through your house and no offers, okay? So that's something to be aware of. And so you need to be knowledgeable and know, like I said, when it comes to the price. And also, I said it depends, right? It depends on how many offers are on the property. Depends on how long it's been on the market. Depends on the condition of the place. It depends on a lot of things. So there's not just one thing that you can say that, okay, here's the golden nugget. Here's what you need to know, and this is what you're going to get for, you don't know any of that stuff because you don't know what a buyer's willing to pay for your house. There's been numerous times where, I've been sitting there, we list the house, I know that we're going to get multiple offers, but then I get these offers that come in and I'm like, holy crap, like there are buyers willing to pay $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 over the asking price. We know it's not going to appraise for that, but that's what a buyer's willing to pay. So like we waive that appraisal contingency, or we waive those things, or we negotiate or talk about how can we make sure that we're netting the most money possible for our sellers in that situation. And those are the things that you need a knowledgeable, experienced agent for to help guide you through that process, right? Here's the question, and a little thing that I like to talk about a lot because it comes up in conversation quite a few times. And people are always like, well, in this market, if there's low inventory, I can just sell my own house. Listen, anyone can sell their own house, right? Like if I'm being honest with you, anyone can sell your house. That's not what the reason is, and where I feel like my value is provided for someone in this current market and as a realtor, right? Like I know that I can go stick a for sale by owner sign in my yard and my house would probably sell because I have a nice house. It's in a desirable location, all those types of things, right? What I will say is where I earn my money and my value and where I feel like my clients really appreciate me is throughout the process. It's throughout the negotiating process. It's throughout the making the decisions like I was just talking about as far as the contingencies that are being waived or the multiple offer situations. Like that is where I earn my money. Anybody can go sell a house, right? Anybody can sell a car. You can throw it up on Craigslist. You can do all these different things and you're going to have somebody that's coming along. But I will say this, are you getting the most value for that if you're doing it yourself? Or is somebody coming in and lowballing you? And statistically, what we see, especially with for sale by owners, is that you're getting lowballed on your offers because your house hasn't been marketed properly. It hasn't been given the opportunity to be shown to the public, to everyone that's out there that's willing to see it and wanting to see it, right? And so by hiring a realtor to come in and tap into those connections, to tap into that community of people, to that group of people, it's going to net you more money even by paying a commission. And so a lot of times people are like, well, I just don't want to pay the commission. Well, would you rather net $40,000 more for your house? Because 6% of what you were going to list it for and what we were going to list it for is a heck of a lot less, and you're making a lot more money if we can net you that much more money for your house, right? So like statistically, that's what it's shown. It's shown that if you hire a realtor, you're going to net more money. That's just the reality. That's why we are professionals and we do what we do. It's the same thing as a doctor, right? Like you're not going to go see a knee doctor if you're having issues with your neck. Like you're going to go see a neck doctor and a professional that's in that profession to do it. Could you fix your knee yourself? Maybe. You just don't go in. Some people do that. They go get a shot like where it goes into the knee or whatever, and they're like, okay, I feel better. But then 6 months later, they don't feel so much better. And now they just paid $5,000 for a shot, and now they feel like they have to go get surgery. Well, you could have saved that $5,000, and you could have went and paid surgery, and you could have felt a lot better moving forward. That's not a very good explanation as far as like netting more money, because obviously you're going to pay more for surgery and that kind of type of stuff, but you would have netted an additional $5,000 because you would have just got surgery instead because you saw a professional to tell you what needed to be done. Same thing in our situation, little tangent there, but our job and where we provide value and where I feel like I provide value is walking people through that situation. So when you have 25 offers on the table, you can break down for everybody to understand, here's the language and everything that's within this contract and within these multiple offers and what's being offered to you so that you can better understand what is the best option for you. And that's the reason why you hire someone, is because they're looking out for your best interest, right? Again, here's another thing with a buyer on the flip side, right? A buyer goes to the listing agent and says, well, I know I can get a better deal and potentially I can get a fair price or a deal by going directly to the listing agent. Here's the thing. No, you can't, because that listing agent, again, is looking out for their client's best interest. Sure, they'll write up a contract because they can double up on the commission and they can put it together, but they're looking out for the seller's best interest. So when you get into things that need to be fixed or you get into problems that arise, who do you think they're going to side with? They're going to side with their seller because that's who they signed a listing agreement with. So you need to understand that, like, it's not about getting the better deal sometimes. It's about looking out for your best interest as well. That's why you want to have someone in your corner, because they're going to be able to advise you and recommend certain things and get you to think about some things that you don't typically think about as a buyer or seller in this market, because you're not in it every single day. Okay, that's my biggest frustration sometimes, is you got people that think they know how to sell a house and think they know what to, that's the easy part, right? Like, it's easy to put together a contract and shake hands and agree on a price, right? But what's the difficult part is everything that comes after that, right? And that's where we earn our money as realtors. That's where we earn our money, to make sure that all the communication is being done between the lender, the title company, the inspector, all these other people involved, so that you don't have to do that and the ball doesn't get dropped somewhere, okay? That's our jobs. Now, I will say this as it pertains to a lot of this stuff too, is if you don't have a realtor that is experienced, knowledgeable, knows what's going on in the everyday life of what's happening in this industry, you need to get one. Because a part-time agent or somebody that's just doing this on the side has no freaking clue what's happening in this market on a daily basis. It changes daily. And that's the one thing that I think a lot of people find themselves into, is they're like, man, I had a horrible experience when I bought a house. I had a horrible experience when we sold our house. Well, who'd you use? Well, I used this guy over here. You go look up the guy or the girl, and they sold 5 or 6 houses the previous year, or they sold, 5 or 6 that year that they listed your. Well, of course you're going to run into those problems, because they're not a professional. Like, they may have a real estate license, but I would say that they're not really a professional, because they're not practicing enough to basically have enough knowledge and experience to give you the best experience possible as you're going through that transaction. It's the same thing. I'll go right back to the doctor and the knee surgery. Like, if I'm going in and I need knee surgery, am I going to go use a doctor that's like, hey, I'm brand new, I've only done 5 surgeries? That's probably not going to make me feel very good, right? Like, I don't know about this. Oh, but I got all these new strategies and different things and different, tools and resources. Like, I don't care. Like, you haven't been doing this very long. Like, I'm not going to use you because, no offense, you don't have enough advice. Now, I will say this, like, if they're an agent and they're on a team and that team's been very successful like ours, like, yeah, by all means use them, because then they can utilize that team leader and that team and their resources and tools that they have. But if they're an individual agent and they don't have much experience or knowledge and they're not on a team and they don't have somebody else to mentor them through that process, I would have some red flags going up. And that's just me speaking. But again, going back to like the doctor, like, I want to go, if I need knee surgery, I want to go find somebody that's performed at least 1,000 knee surgeries, so I know that when I go in, I feel pretty confident about who's doing it and what they're doing, right? It's the same thing. And so when you guys are thinking about making a fair price and looking out there and what a seller is going to be willing to offer, or what a seller is going to be willing to accept, I should say, you need to have somebody in your corner that knows exactly what you need to do. Now, does that mean that you're going to get the house every single time? No, but it means you're going to be in the running, right? It means that you're going to at least be in the running to have a true shot at getting that house, as opposed to being the first one that's just set aside and no longer being looked at, okay? So again, another one of those questions that I like to address with you guys, because it comes up quite a bit and it's a conversation that we have, is that this question that we've been talking about is what's a fair price that a seller would be willing to accept? And unfortunately, this is the current market we're in. It is what it is, but I think if you can have somebody that shoots it straight with you and is open and honest with you about it, hopefully that encourages you to get prepared. If you're a seller, hopefully some of these things have helped you get prepared to listening, as far as what do I need to do from a buyer standpoint and from a seller standpoint as it relates to this issue. So if you guys have any questions, comments, let me know. I'm more than happy to address those things with you guys. Thanks for tuning in and listening. We will talk to you guys soon. And with that, I appreciate you guys following and always staying tuned. If there's something you want me to talk about, hit me up. Let me know. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.